Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of Warbird Wednesday. I'm here with my faithful sidekick, the decorous assistant, Greg Kenny. We're here in the Miles hangar, the Vietnam hangar, and today we are continuing on our track down trainer lane. Did you know we have a lane of trainers, Greg? I did not know that. We do. Greg, of course, is helping me get through all this stuff. We're outdoors again, and you can see I have my trusty helmet on today because we're doing the T-28 Trojan, so the staff thought that this would work. Also, it is so hot that they're hoping it bakes my brain, I think is what they're doing here. So we're going to get this very warm helmet off here. There we go. And we're going to toss that off camera. Greg makes another fine catch. So today, as we move down trainer lane, we are going to work on an airplane that now is another transition. And you're saying, why is it a transition? I'm going to tell you why. The thing about this is the T-28 Trojan. Plan view of the airplane, as you could see, two-place trainer. Now this aircraft was specifically built to replace the airplane that we did the last episode. Did you know the last episode, Greg, was our 20th? I can't believe that. What started out, we were locked in the hangars. We're now on our 21st episode. I want to thank all of those of you who have hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate that, or liked us on Facebook. Thank you so much, and thank you for giving us so much feedback. We appreciate that as well. We get a lot of that. So plan view of the airplane. So two-place, an instructor and a trainee. This particular airplane continuing to be a radial engine, which is kind of where we're going. We're going to talk about why that is. Now, the big change between the T6 and this airplane, this is an 1820 power plant. So this continues, as I said, to be a radial, but now we're on tricycle gear. So as you can see, we're now looking like those jets that are coming into service, and that we have a nose gear. So we're teaching people, we talked about ground handling, we're teaching ground handling, and then of course we're teaching flying the airplane. Now, the T-28 is this is a North American product. The T-28 is interesting because I want you to think about something generationally for a second. Go way back to our second or third episode whenever we did the P-40. Remember the P-40, Greg? We did that a long time ago. And we talked about contemporary airplanes. The Zero is example. It's contemporary fighter airplane. And then, of course, you know, we had Brewster Buffaloes in there and all kinds of different early low-wing monoplanes. This airplane, as a trainer, has stepped up to where it now has a top speed of 343 miles an hour. That's not cruise speed, but my point there is in 1949, we've now eclipsed even the fighter aircraft that were available just 10 years ago. So the technology advancement, especially with North America, and we talked about them last episode, built a whole bunch of airplanes, and we're moving forward. There are about 2,000 of these built in various models, and we'll talk about that. They were built pretty much like flying anvils. You know, we were talking about the Stearman, and we got the Fairchild, we got the T6. These aircraft they were tough, but this airplane is double tough, and it is the culmination of everything that we had learned in the various armed forces in trying to get trainers done. You know, metal wing, we talked about the Fairchild causing that requirement for a metal wing. Now this airplane, when it came into trainer mode in the and it went all the way up to the last one was flown out of the training command in 1984. Can you believe that, Greg? 1984 was the last of these. Actually, the last training command airplane went to a museum. Now they not only did, this is where we're starting to get cross-service training. So they not only were Air Force, but they were also, what other service? They were Navy trainers. Some of them, the C models, had a tail hook on them. This, as I said, is an A model and a B model, and we're going to talk about some other uses for them. But now we're getting an airplane, and this airplane is in Navy livery. We're talking about airplanes that are cross-trained. And why is that? The reason for cross-training is quite simple. We are getting to the point now of the sheer cost of training. Remember, we're post-war. although we're in the run-up through the Cold War, so we're going through all types of different jet airplanes as technology improves and the power plants improves. We are now starting to get a little cost conscious about the fleet. And so the fleet airplanes that were in the fleet across, not just the Navy, but I'm talking about the fleet of airplanes, they're starting to think about maintenance. That radial is easy to maintain, this 1820. The airplane is fairly tough. It's a fairly low-cost airplane to operate when you're talking about fuel, and it's hard to break the airplane. So the military is now starting to get cost-conscious. We've seen that go all the way up to, and I've talked about it before, with multi-mission airplanes, especially with the Navy, where the Navy had a whole series of combat aircraft and surveillance airplanes and so on that they eventually started conglomerating all together. So you have one type of airplane that does multi-mission, and that has continued. You can see that very heavily with the F-18, with the Growler program, and you could also see it a little bit with the F-35. At some point, maybe Greg will get lucky and we'll do a walk around on an F-35. Wouldn't that be fun, Greg, if we got to do that? So now this type was also used in coin. And I'm not talking about the coins in your pocket, Greg. It was used for a very interesting mission, and that was, it was used as a counterinsurgency airplane or close air support with CAS. And so the airplane in a counterinsurgency role, you know, a lot of trainers, when we talked about the T-6 being pressed into service either as a forward air control and a ground attack airplane, a lot of trainers were pressed into service as combat aircraft. And the question is, why? Well, it's actually quite simple. They were abundant, they were cheap, they were relatively inexpensive to operate, and if you lost one, you didn't worry about it. Because remember, if you're doing with close air support CAS or counterinsurgency, the big challenge with these airplanes is they're down low. And what do we talk about, like with the P-51 and a lot of aircraft losses in World War II? It wasn't so much later in the war that we lost airplanes in dogfights with other air forces. It was when the airplane's down low, that never really went away. And so these particular airplanes were not only trainers, they have a great life as a trainer, but the real story here and the little known facts about them is when they were pressed into counterinsurgency operations. Now, they were in counterinsurgency operations all over the globe, and one of the guys that we're going to throw up, Dean Hunter, and I want to do something here today. I'm going to go over and do my stage 2 here because I want to talk about Dean. Let's go over here, Greg. We're going to see. Now, I'm always scared of colorful drinks, Greg. And today we have a drink that probably was contemporary with Dean back in the day, because Shirley Temple was, you know, he probably came up then. We'll find out from Dean whether he liked Shirley Temple. It is a Hollywood Original. I did not know there was a Hollywood Original soda. It's 100% caffeine-free and very low sodium. Greg, you're continuing to look out for my well-being, which I appreciate. I am a little bit concerned, though. I always check the expiration. The expiration on this is best by 9/30/21. So you got to ask yourself, what is in this that gives it that kind of shelf life? But we're going to find out. So we're going to open this up, and I'm going to give it a shot, and we're going to do a salute here. Well, you know, I don't know that I like this one. This one, I think this one has already been on the shelf too long. But Greg, it doesn't feel like there's any noxious chemicals, coursing through my veins. If I do pass out during this thing, you achieved what you did with the brainwash, is that you poisoned me. Give it one more shot just in case it was a misfire on the palate. No, I think we pretty much know that this would not be something I would find in my refrigerator, but you might find a Shirley Temple, a Hollywood Original. They are not a sponsor of this program. Now, Dean, I'm going to take one more swig of this because Dean was a counterinsurgency pilot very early in the Vietnam War. We're going to talk about a little bit of unknown history about these airplanes on that. And this, Dean actually flew the aircraft in Laotian markings when they were flying out of Laos, and there were contract pilots or Air Force pilots flying these airplanes, and guess what? Secret, they weren't supposed to be there. They were not supposed to be there, but they were flying counterinsurgency missions. They got shot up pretty bad. They lost a lot of T-28s, and ultimately what ended up happening is that secret war in Laos continued to progress under a couple of things. One of them was Operation Water Pump, and they eventually brought in a heavier airplane that we've already done, Greg, the F-100. The F-100 was flying strikes. So Dean and all of those guys that were flying for the United States in the Cold War, and we couldn't talk about you, and there's a lot of them. This is a salute to you. Now, one of the cool things about these airplanes, and this T-28 behind me was actually donated to the museum. It's part of our flying fleet. It has in its, we talked about counterinsurgency and close air support. This aircraft was serviced by the depot that actually serviced all of the CIA airplanes. So I can't promise you that this airplane was in any black ops or anything like that, but when we went through the history on the airplane, this aircraft actually has time at those depots, which is unusual for these either they stayed with the training command and whatever service they were, but this airplane was up to something. Really, the D model was the ground attack version of this airplane. It was fitted with hardpoints. It could fly close air support, as I said, CAS. It didn't have armor, and it didn't have self-sealing fuel tanks. There were some modifications on these airplanes by two different companies that actually made them even more of a heavier attack airplane, but it was never really well suited for that, and it suffered very heavy losses. The other thing you can look at, another propeller-driven airplane in Vietnam that suffered extremely heavy losses, very similar, was the Skyraider. The Skyraider also, these propeller-driven low and slow airplanes, along with helicopters, suffered horrendous losses in the Vietnam War, and it was just because they were down low and they were easily shot at. It's when you do the history on these things, it's one thing to really get surprised by how large our aircraft losses. If you look at 105s and some of these other aircraft, how many of these airplanes were lost. Now, the interesting thing about it was actually they continued, although they had, I would say, mixed results on the close air support. A couple of interesting things, Greg, about this airplane in Vietnam. You want to know what it was? First of all, this is the first fixed wing American military loss in Vietnam was a T-28. Official loss in Vietnam was a T-28. The other side of the coin, there was a defector who took a T-28 to the North Vietnamese. This was the first North Vietnamese fighter. They took it, repurposed it, and flew it. So the airplane stood on both sides of the fence, which I think is kind of quite interesting. Now, the last line on this, there was actually a turboprop version of this airplane, and Greg can throw up a vision of this, but they got rid of the radial and they put a turboprop on it. They continued to kind of play with the counterinsurgency mission on this, and it just never panned out, and the program was abandoned in 1965. This particular airplane, and Greg can get a shot of this, we always try to do things that talk about the people that flew the airplanes. This airplane is actually in the livery of Naval Air Station El Centro, the training command down there, and this is the livery of an airplane that actually flew down there, and Dean actually has one of these. A model of one of these. You can actually sit there and talk to him about it. So again, not only can you see that this airplane is tied locally to the museum, but you can actually come in and meet the people that flew them, which I think is really exciting. This airplane, once it was done in military service, and as I said, it really transitioned out in the mid-'80s. It went into enthusiast hands, and it has done very, very well with private enthusiasts. This is kind of what I would call, in a polite way, the economy Warbird. If you don't want to do a P-51, as these things have got more expensive, or a P-40 or one of these airplanes will fit that bill for you if you want that kind of performance. They have that bandwidth of performance. They're relatively stingy on fuel as compared to some other airplanes, and they're fairly easy to maintain with that 1820. Their legacy is thousands and thousands of pilots that went through these airplanes over the years. And again, made by an incredibly prolific company in North American aviation. Now, I want to go over here for our gratuitous product placement. The gratuitous product placement today is, look at this beautiful North American aviation shirt. People will stop you, Greg, and actually ask for your autograph. Not only does it have North American aviation, but it's got that really nice, that's actually a patch. That's not a decal, which is very cool. And of course, you've got the stripe, the flash on the sleeve there. But this is something you want. So go out to that website and pick that thing up. Now, the other thing about these airplanes, and we have two of them, the A and the B. Now, for all you aficionados out there, I know when Greg does the walk around on the, again, we have an A and a B model here. People are going to go, that prop on that A model is not right. You are absolutely correct. That airplane was also donated to us and as an A, and it was reconfigured a little bit. So it has a different prop. The A's have that two-bladed prop. It doesn't have that. So when you come after me in the chat, I want you to remember that that airplane's been modified a little bit, but it was born as an A model T-28. These airplanes are part of our ride program. So you want to go out and go to our ride page on our website. You can actually, did you know that, Greg? You can actually go for a ride in this airplane. Isn't that cool? Now, the one thing, when you go for a ride in this, let's say you don't want to do the P-51, another kind of little insider thing, in the right conditions, this airplane, it's not as fast as a P-51, but what will it do, Greg? It'll actually outclimb a P-51 just a little bit, but it'll actually outclimb a P-51. So it has really amazing performance, and like with all North American product that we've been talking about, it's just incredibly versatile. Not only is it a trainer, but it made it all its way into a combat airplane. Now, the one thing when Greg throws up that the turboprop version of this, the interesting thing is, Greg, and I don't know whether you'll see the resemblance, you know what it looks like to me? It looks like another airplane in our inventory, which is that P-63. It looks very similar with that kind of tapered nose with a P-63, although it has a plussed up vertical and horizontal because, they're getting a lot more torque, so they want more control surface in the windstream. But that is the T-28 Trojan, a very interesting airplane that you can come see, go out for a ride and go out to the ride page and get one, very economical. Now, we're going to be doing another interesting series, Greg. Did you know that? It's a fun series. It's called Under the Cowling. We do this kind of brief walk around and history on the airplanes. What we're going to do is a 45-minute web stream on YouTube where you can actually ask questions in the chat, and we will bring in guests. The first one that we're doing this coming Saturday on the 15th is we're going to have Michael Flieger. He is a P-51 pilot, and we're going to have Todd Ward, the owner of Man of War, is going to be here. That's going to be exciting because we're going to sit down, we're going to really get into the airplanes, which is something we can do here, and we're going to talk about flying and piloting and any questions that you want to ask. You can ask questions in the chat, or you can Greg can throw up an email as part of this video. You can send questions to Greg in advance if you have questions. Remember, that is the P-51D Man of War, and that is coming up this Saturday, the 15th at 11 o'clock on our little web channel there. So we want you to do that. Now, what I'm going to do is remember to tell you to go out there and get that shirt, okay, that gratuitous product placement. Smash that subscribe button. Remember to like us on Facebook, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Warbird Wednesday. Thanks very much for joining us, and have a great day.